Welcome to the OT tip of the month. This month we want to highlight how can you access OT support. Our teams are getting more questions from teachers about challenges with behavior and regulation, and we wanted to highlight how you can access your OT for support at your school. So there's three different scenarios where OT might be brought in for support. The first is with a general education student that's having some challenges, and we want to first point out that every school has a process for MTSS or intervention, and that we fit within that process that's already set up within your school. Oftentimes, it is the teacher bringing their concerns to a team and that team making recommendations for next steps. Within that process, the OT can be a part of that and can determine some interventions for a student. Data can be collected and it can be part of that process that's already in place. We would look to the intervention team to reach out to us as OTs for when that support is needed. The next scenario is that a student has gone through that intervention process, the team has decided to move forward with a special education evaluation, and then at that point, the team does need to determine whether or not an OT should be a part of that evaluation. We are a related service provider, which means that we can't stand alone. We need to be part of the special education team evaluation, and a student has to have a special education disability category in order to qualify for or receive occupational therapy services. The last scenario is a student who is already receiving special education services, but is now showing some needs that weren't addressed previously that are in the area of our expertise. In this scenario, with a student with an IEP, the OT would either make some recommendations to try some interventions, or a full team evaluation would have to be started in order to add OT to a student's IEP or their individual education plan. An OT has to evaluate a student to determine their needs and make recommendations from there. So in all three of these scenarios, our team uses and promotes the teachers and special education teachers filling out our sensory motor pre-referral checklist. This is a checklist that our team created to help streamline communication and understand whether or not an OT support is warranted. With the sensory motor checklist, we have two different formats that you can access this form. We have it in a PDF for a paper form to be printed, and then we also have access to it now in a Google form to be sent electronically, and our OT would receive an email notification when it's complete. We have two different forms. We have a pre-K through 4th grade form, and we have a middle school, high school, 5th through 12th grade form. And the reason for this separation is there's different expectations for these different age levels that we want to be mindful of. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you to get a sense of what this form looks like. This is the Google form. It asks for your student's name and who's completing it. This first pre-K through 4th grade form has 4 sections. Looking at motor skills. The elementary grades, a lot of students are doing coloring and cutting and art projects. They're also going to recess, so we want to be thoughtful about whether or not they can get themselves dressed and zipping and unzipping. Writing is a big area that we support, and this breaks down all of the different pieces of writing that we can support as OTs. There's visual perceptual visual processing. This is a foundational skill required for reading and writing that we want to understand and rule out. And then finally, the sensory processing and/or self-regulation area is another piece that we support. There's an opportunity for the teacher to provide additional comments on the bottom. With our 5th through 12th grade checklist, we have this additional area of organization. Since we see more difficulties with executive function, this is an area we also can support for our middle school, high school students. Once these forms are complete, the OT may have enough information to determine either interventions or if they're going to evaluate and what assessments, or they might need to gather some additional information, which might look like a conversation with a teacher, a classroom observation, or reviewing some work samples. We hope that your team will use this checklist as a tool to streamline communication and make the process as efficient as possible for communicating with your OT, please reach out to your OT to talk more about their involvement in the intervention process and in the evaluation process and get access to these forms, whichever one is going to be most useful for your team. We really appreciate your partnership and want to continue to support you and your team. Thank you.